proving to yourself that you are as good as anybody and that it helps improve your skills. How many of you would think of fellowships as a prime moving? Okay, so.
And leadership also.
In what way?
We are just encouraging them, and we being there and helping them to approach the people there.
Okay, now I think so we feel that they want to prove to themselves that they are as good as anybody, and it's a confidence booster. So that's the most important probably deal. Any questions which you can have a couple of minutes now? You have 4 minutes.
Finished, almost finished.
One single question we can take.
Our team and our leader, and thank you very much for coming. It's very encouraging for us to see a very good number of people come. We've, as Dr. Graham said, we've put a lot into it. I hope you will take a lot out of it and enjoy it as well. That's the other thing. So thank you very much for coming, and hope to see you next year. And if you have any other questions, we'll be on the stand all day till about 6 o'clock. So you're welcome to come and tell the things you really want to tell us in private or semi-private. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's start legit. Okay, we can start the program. We'll first start by JV, then Nati.
Thank you, Dr. Natarajan, for giving me the opportunity to. Good morning. I'd like to thank Dr. Natarajan for giving me the opportunity to talk on a very special subject be aware of, and that is called plagiarism. I have got no financial interest. I just start with a quiz. Someone in the IT industry gave birth to twins. Guess what they named them? Can anybody tell? Someone in the IT industry gave birth to twins. Guess what they named them? IT industry.
Little bit.
Copy and paste. Copy and paste. Plagiarism is the act of presenting another's work or ideas as your own. And I put that image linked from that where from the I got this image, and this is not plagiarism. Did I do that? I need you to do a presentation on the topic of plagiarism. If you don't have some time to prepare anything, just steal something from the internet. The rise of retractions in the years, coming years is increasing, and the plagiarism is on the rise. And this is the PubMed notices and the wave of the science notices. You can see that it's going on increasing. That there is in 1977 it was 0, and it's about 300 around now about the plagiarism notices. The plagiarism is about 9.8%. Totally retracted articles is 2001 047. Fraud or suspected fraud 43.4%. And other 11.3%. Most retracted papers in the PubMed were withdrawn due to the plagiarism. And the journals is that on that your left is the important journals like Journal of Biological Chemistry, Anesthesia, Allergy. Even the Science has retractions of 32 articles for plagiarism. Journal of Immunology, Blood, Nature has got 19 retractions. Cancer Research has got 16 retractions. How well we are in India. India is also not far away, and there is a percentage of plagiarism in India is seen and is going on increase in the recent years. This is Fang et al. In 2012. What is plagiarism means? The practice of taking somebody else's work or ideas or passing them off as in one's own. Derived from the Latin word plagiaris, kidnapper, from plagium, kidnapping, from the Greek plagian. This is an Oxford Dictionary definition. The use of others' published or unpublished ideas or words or other intellectual property without attribution or permission and presenting them as the new and original rather than derived from the existing source is plagiarism. And in fact, knowingly and unknowingly, there are several famous people who are also on the list like H.G. Wells, T.S. Eliot, Martin Luther King, Alex Haley, Doris Goodwin, John Baden, Michael Bolton, Stephen Ambrose, Jane Goodwell, Seeds of Hope, who has written that one, and they are all alleged to have plagiarized.
The latest is that guy from Times,
Yeah.
Indian. He verbatim of it.
Plagiarism is a can ruin. Even C.N. Rao has, Professor Bharat C.N. Rao has plagiarism. I will show you. C.N. Rao. Ruined reputation, end careers, embarrass institutions, loss of public trust in science and medicine, misguide and delay the progress of science, which could result in continued suffering of the patient.
So, JB, can I ask, I'm interrupting, like person like C.N. Rao or ourselves, how do we, for us, fellows work for us and they do something, how do we make sure before we send to anywhere?
There is a plagiarism software is there. And I checked my article before I coming over here, whether it is plagiarized or not. It could be intentional or unintentional, some are subtle, some are very serious, scientific misconduct, misappropriation of the fact, ethical and legal implication. Plagiarism of the ideas can also be there. Simply uses the same idea, thought or invention and presents as his own without proper acknowledgement is also plagiarism. But it is very difficult to detect it. When one can plagiarize ideas, a group member in a review board, funding agency, journal reviewer, you are reviewing a journal, they got an idea and can plagiarize. Collaborator, someone of the known to your colleague, someone known to your colleague, you can plagiarize. Why does one plagiarize? Oh no, I forgot to do some my science fair project and it's due tomorrow, and maybe I could just reuse last year's, and that is plagiarism. And then people recourse to plagiarism because due to that lack of planning and lack of time and lack of effort. This is a shorter route they choose. Why does one plagiarize? Publish or perish environment has put a pressure on us, lack of self-esteem, desire to make attractive biodata, to increase the number of publications for promotion, academic advancement, grant sanctioning, professional supremacy, incentive. One can plagiarize that entire paragraph, single sentence, few phrases from different languages, published long ago, source quoted incompletely. Word for word plagiarism, there is a cut, copy, paste due to the internet, and an epidemic disease rapidly increasing by one of the modes called internet. Internet makes plagiarism easy. Also, it makes detection of plagiarism easier. Online software that can easily detect even short phrases that are copied verbatim from the original source. This is an example. Inaction in the face of cheating leads to even higher level of cheating. The author's name is there, source is there, journal name there, page name there. It's not plagiarized. But if you don't put that inverted bracket, inverted comma, then it becomes plagiarized. And when you don't tell the source also, it's also plagiarized. Inaction in the face of cheating leads to even higher levels of cheating. Students tend to plagiarize more when they realize professors are willfully bribing themselves to the easy. Reference but no source. The same thing sense is that put and is plagiarized, and subtle plagiarism is there. And this is the article published in PubMed in the journal Molecular Pharmacology. The same photograph, a part of it is copied and enlarged and put into another article and is plagiarized. Fortunately, there are softwares to detect plagiarism, and these are the softwares available to us, and you can easily plagiarize. And I wrote an article in that new journal, this Asia Pacific Journal of Ophthalmology article, with one of my fellows, and they found that there are some sentences are plagiarized. And then I found that we changed the full article, and you should be very careful. You give somebody to work on that one and they copy and then use it. This is a plagiarism. I tested before I coming over here one of my article, laboratory support in the diagnosis of uveitis, and I found that there is no plagiarism. Mosaic plagiarism is very difficult to detect. This is a more common form of plagiarism. The sentence or paragraph structure is almost similar to the original source, with a few words and phrases here and there, which are author's own words. Only 2 years later, all those friendly syllables were suddenly plugged into new conditions. And this red color is that same thing is changed into plagiarized. And this is an example. This is a copy and this is a source. Self-plagiarism, and I don't claim that I have not done it. If plagiarism is a theft, self-plagiarism refers to stealing of one's own. Before going to the talk, I was not aware that you cannot plagiarize or you cannot take your own article which has been published earlier. Does self-plagiarism actually amounts to scientific misconduct? In a scientific journal, readers expect to read original articles, and any kind of self-plagiarism violates such expectations from the readers, and it's a kind of intellectual prostitution, I would call it. Authors may borrow significantly from their own earlier work. At times it's difficult, particularly description of histopathological tissues like a tumor, a schwannoma, and you wrote an article on schwannoma, and the same schwannoma article you write on orbital tumor review, and you cannot change that histopathological pattern of the schwannoma description. So there are certain amount of plagiarism we cannot avoid, and not more than 1/3 of the material is acceptable. Seek permission from the copyright owner if it is been large amount of plagiarism has to be done. Self-plagiarism, cite the original publication, disclosure and transparency to the editor and the readers. And it has been like you should that this part of has been already published in previous publication. Duplicate and redundant publications, authors may submit the same article for publication in 2 different journals just to increase the chance of publishing and hope of one doesn't get accepted. At times it's possible for both get accepted for publication. The authors should inform the editors the same has been sent for review for different articles. In case both get accepted, in fact it should not be done. Authors decide to keep quiet and the latter get automatically retracted for plagiarism and copyright infringement. NLM reserve the right to assign both the articles as the duplicate for publication. Not only the one article, both the articles become the duplicate publication. And this is a very good example of Bharat Ratna. Now Dr. C.N.R. Rao has been accused of plagiarism. An Indian, this is published in the Nature Indian Science Advisor, caught up in plagiarism row. An apology for small oversight has been misinterpreted, says advisor. And this is article published in Advanced Matter, Chitara B, Panchkala LS, and Kupashati and C.N.R. Rao. And what has happened in that article? Dr. Rao says that he wrote to the journal offering to withdraw the paper, but the editor felt that the work to be important and should be published with an apology. and the apology was published, and why it happened, and they explained to it. They said that 3 sentences in the introduction and the description of an equation has been copied verbatim from a paper published in Applied Physics later in April 2010 by Sen Group. Chitara, the student of Dr. Rao, says he was responsible for the error and sincerely apologized to it. He says he had intended to modify the sentences later but forgot it. Sena Rao says that he did go through the paper before it was submitted but missed the problem. The journal published the paper in December 2011 issue with an accompanying apology. And this is another example of muscle within muscles, tensomyographic and histochemical analysis of normal human, an article, and it has retracted from the Journal of Anatomy. There is also some articles in the Journal of Anatomy retracted, and all action has been agreed to the fact that the table 1 and 2 are associated have already been published in another journal. Their use in the current study was unacknowledged. We regret any inconvenience to harm that these errors have been caused. And Indian Journal of Dermatology, Indian journals are not exception. Authors are barred from submitting their manuscript to the Indian Journal of Dermatology for the next 5 years for the charges of plagiarism, which contains identical introduction, identical table, and most of the discussion on the article was already published. If is plagiarism a crime, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Publish in ethical, how to fix it? Publish in ethical and responsible manner and should comply with all relevant legislation. Present results clearly, honestly, and without fabrication, falsification, or inappropriate data manipulation. Describe methods and approaches clearly and unambiguously so that their findings can be confirmed by others. Added to the publications requirement, original work, not plagiarized and not published anywhere. You need to write a declaration now for every journal as authors take collective responsibility for submission and preparation of the manuscript. Accurately reflect individual's contribution to the work and is reporting it. State conflict of results if any. Summary, when you say you did the work yourself, you did it and you have to acknowledge that. When you rely on someone else's work, you cite it. When you write your paper, you use your own words and your own voice. And this was copied from somebody else, author was unknown. If I have not done it, I should be accused of plagiarism. If you did not write it, you did not own it. If you did not own it, don't use it. If you cannot put it in your own words, you don't know it. If you ignore this, when you could find yourself in need. So take home message, don't copy, don't paste. Don't copy and paste. And these are the references. If I have not put the references, I should be accused of plagiarism. Thank you very much. It's not plagiarized, it's not retracted. There is an apology later. It has...
Because this is a problem, when you are writing on the same subject and again, and you have developed a certain style, syntax, language. Even if you are not copying it,
Same words.
when you're writing, don't look at your previous publications. Start writing afresh.
Yeah.
When you write afresh, you will not be, otherwise there is a huge temptation to, what you say, copy-paste.
Copy-paste.
Okay, so that's one. The second is, this is again a debatable issue. Like we face this challenge when one of the authors, editors of our textbook on uveitis, wanted to use his own pictures and, which he had used in a publication in ophthalmology way back in the journal, Elsevier. So I was forced to write to the reply I got was, well, you don't need any permission. If it is your own work and you want to put in a textbook, we will overlook this, we will not. Otherwise, they say charge. They charge money.
They charge lot of money.
Lot of money.
Almost.
Okay. But the publisher's policy. I think that would not count as plagiarism.
But we still have to ask them.
You have to
You
seek
still have to ask
permission
No,
and
we
have
have
written, written
You
permission.
have to have
Written
clear
permission.
permission.
So you have to ask them and also maybe give a reference.
You have to give courtesy. You have to give courtesy because
No, because the same way we had a book on corneal transplantation and we wanted the authors because it was autokeratoplasty and at that time we didn't have a picture, but we had to pay $1,200 to the person despite the fact that he gave the permission. We had to pay to the journal.
Yeah.
And this was Archives of Ophthalmology.
Because if a new publisher takes over, he can say there is like
Sentence.
Yes.
No, these what you are giving these.
This I got from the information from the plagiarism
checkers, these software that are available. They look for appearance of 3 continuous words or 5.
Every 7th word they look. Every seventh word, if you are the writer, you will add the same words there.
Okay.
But if you are not the writer, you may add a different word. So what it does, it blanks out every 7th word and compares it to another one and say if these same words are there in missing. So if they are there, then it automatically considers that.
But if you give that as your own reference, is it not like a reference?
if you can reference, but if you publish in some book, you might.
But that's not really the age-old copy.
The article, and that they said that what is the original? I said the original I don't have. I have not seen the original. Then he said that you can quote that where from you got it. The secondary source. Secondary source you have to give.
Okay.
But I have faced 2 situations, Dr. Natarajan. One was that one of our papers, which is highly cited on in AIOC on atorvastatin and diabetic retinopathy, was copied verbatim by a guy and he copied, except he changed, atorvastatin was changed. Okay. And how I got into it, because I was checking the cross-references, citations of my paper, and I found this paper. He had cited the same paper, so I got onto that. He had not changed a comma in the entire, including the tables, except wherever it appeared, he gave a command to the computer, change atorva to a herbal drug. The numbers, the statistics, the p-values, everything remained the same. Okay. And he published it. Another was published in AIOC, where one of the authors, lifted, a picture from our book on OCT and claimed that it was his.
This is a clear standard plagiarism.
Yeah.
In fact, is that nowadays everybody is very conscious.
I didn't do anything in both these instances. I forgave them. And I thought, it's okay, because unless we can, take some serious disciplinary action against these people, like what can I do to a guy sitting in a Cairo University? What can I do? I would not trust those guys again. I would not read their journal. I would not pay much attention to what the guy says. It erodes my confidence in the ability of that man to speak, talk honest. So some of these issues probably, I don't know.
Plagiarism software has this problem with pictures. It's unable to recognize.
Obvious plagiarized.
It's extremely difficult actually. Words it can easily recognize, but images it's not able to still. It will over a period of time probably it will get refined.
But sometimes you have a limited repertoire of images, and you are writing too many articles and too many.
270 international publications. I never knew, I never read about plagiarism and I never read about duplication. And thanks to you that after doing the publications, I have read about duplication in medical literature, about which I will be talking to you about. What is duplication? Why is duplication a scientific misconduct? When is dual publication acceptable? How to detect duplication in literature? And what is to be done after detection of duplicate manuscript or publication? Now, what is duplication? If you see the National Library of Medicine, duplicate publication substantially duplicates another article without acknowledgement. Basically what happens is that it is the same data set which is there. There may be some change in the title or some amount of abstract may be changed or the authors may be the same and there may be some change in the order of the authors, and the text would be near identical. So any part of a publication may be verbatim or almost common with the dual publication, and the duplication patterns include duplicated parts of the article in abstract, discussion and results. And this is a study which was done by Irami et al., and he wanted to compare all the duplication patterns that are available in the various duplicated articles, and he found that maximally the introduction and discussion was duplicated, and closely followed by the part which was from results to discussion. The methods generally are not that much duplicated. There would be some amount of difference in the methodology. So why is duplication a scientific misconduct? Because publications are essential for academic promotions and extension of tenure in academic institutes and universities, and there is a continued pressure to publish a certain number of articles in peer-reviewed journals. So unidentified duplications and redundant literature, they aid in increasing the number of these publications, and that is why people duplicate publications. Why we do not the same outcome twice at the time of meta-analysis, whether it is bad or it is good, and so this would skew the results. And also deny other authors the opportunity to publish their worthwhile work. Now, in a study by Rami et al., 1.35% of the Medline citations which shared authors were found to be duplications. 60% of the duplicates did not have a cross-reference to their corresponding original article, and 82% of the duplicates published in journals having no impact factor to escape detection. For instance, if you publish something in, say, index journal like American Journal of Ophthalmology, and you publish something like in DOS Times. So, generally those kind of things escape detection because a publication which is there in a thing like DOS Times will not be there available on internet, but the other one which is there in a peer-reviewed journal, international peer-reviewed journal, would be available on the net. Now, this is the study which shows that how the number of duplicate publications over the years have increased. In 1975, the duplicate count was 6 per 1,000 citations, and in 2005 it has doubled. It has become 12. Now, this is another example how one figure was picked up, and there was a striking resemblance because the figure in two journals was found to be similar. And when the reviewer found this, he informed the editor about it, and so reviewers can actually, if they review well, can identify duplication. This is another example of duplication where the blue highlights are the similarity between the two articles, and notice that the authors are also same, except that some of the authors are deleted from the second publication as compared to the first publication. So, duplication is a subset of self-plagiarism, and there could be in the form of redundant publications. You have some other terms like salami slicing and text recycling. What is the difference between duplicate publication and redundant literature? Duplicate publication is similar, you have similar analysis of both the publications, but in redundant literature, there is a different analysis and tests of both the publications. The database would be the same, but different tests would be applied to it. Then there would be similar theoretical and empirical text in duplication, but there will be different theoretical and empirical text in redundant literature. And duplication would have same unmodified data, but in redundant literature you would have some additional data and some sub-analysis. For instance, you may show a technique on 3 patients and then another publication show it on 10 patients, or show a technique of say 1 month follow-up and then again reproduce it to say this is a 3-month follow-up in another publication. Then duplication would be in the similar language, but redundant literature would have a different slant of a language. But both of them, duplication or redundant literature, is a scientific misconduct. Then you have what is salami slicing, that is there's a partitioning of a larger study. You've conducted a large study, but you're making out small papers out of it, taking various parameters into consideration, into smaller published studies. Then you have copyright infringement, that is the encroachment on exclusive right to publish, reproduce, sell, distribute or modify the publication. And this one should know very clearly when one is writing a publication or picking up from various books the chapters or the figures or the tables, with whom does the copyright lie, because you have to seek permission from that source. And the other is text recycling, that is the writers reuse the portions of the background text that have previously appeared in others' works. Now, when are dual publications acceptable? When dual publications are acceptable, provided you inform the editors of both the journals and both the editors, they agree for the same. The existence of each version of the published paper should be made clear to each set of the readers in the form of a reference or in the form of a note. And when an article published in one language is translated into a different language and published in a different journal, but again both the editors have to know about it. Then summaries or abstracts of papers published in conference proceedings subsequently published in expanded forms as a journal article. Because, for instance, if you send an abstract to American Academy of Ophthalmology, then it is the ophthalmology journal's first right to refuse it, and you're bound by that copyright for that particular manuscript. And only when they refuse it can you send it to another journal.
Indian Journal also.
Indian Journal of Ophthalmology is also the same. So acknowledgement of the primary source is a must. How to detect duplication in literature? Now, basically, whenever duplication in literature can be reported by reviewers, when the editor sends the papers to the reviewers, they can say that this is a duplicated publication whenever they review the whole paper. Then the readers sometimes can point out if it has escaped the reviewers, then the readers who are working on the same technique or they are doing a review kind of a thing of some particular subject, they point out that this is duplication in literature. Then there are whistleblowers who can tell you about the duplication in literature and the softwares which are available. Now, how to detect duplication in literature? Generally, reviewers do it because of the common overlapping reviewers for the journals who get similar manuscripts by the same set of authors. And the subject would also be the same. And especially suppose it is in the same country, then the reviewer, for instance, if it is in America and you are sending something to cornea and you are sending something to ophthalmology, the reviewers would be the same. So, in fact, that's a tip when we send publications, that if you are sending to something to American Journal of Ophthalmology or US and it has got rejected for a couple of times there, then it is always better to change the content, send it to British Journal of Ophthalmology or to Clinical Experimental Ophthalmology, because their reviewers would be different, of course, after doing the changes, because their reviewers would be different as compared to the ones who have previously rejected it. Then readers can alert about the already published articles, and there are software which are available which track citation and author pattern. So similarity over 10% can be detected by further examination, and they can be followed up with manual examination of both the articles. Now, this is the software, one of the softwares, in fact, the Electronic Text Basic Local Alignment and Similarity tool, which can detect the similarity from the PubMed. Now, what is to be done after detection of duplicate manuscript or publication? Now, there is what is called as Committee of Publication Ethics Guidelines, or COPE, which is there in UK. And until now, it was being looked after. It was being looked after by Dr. Harminder Singh Dua. And what happens is that the reviewer informs the editor about a redundant publication or a duplicate publication. The editor thanks the reviewer and says that you plan to investigate and get full documentary evidence if not already provided. And then the editor himself checks the degree of overlap or redundancy. Now, if there is a major overlap, redundancy, or evidence that authors have sought to hide redundancy, then you can contact the corresponding author in writing, ideally enclosing the authorship statement, and you await the author response. But if there is a minor overlap and the editor feels that there is not too much of a redundancy, or then in that case you contact the author in neutral terms and explain that the secondary papers from which some references may have been sought must refer to the original, and you request for the missing reference, and then again inform the reviewer, the editor informs the reviewer of the outcome of the action. But if the editor thinks that there is no significant overlap, then he discusses with the reviewer and they go ahead with the review. Now, if after the editor has sought explanation from the corresponding author, he finds that the explanation is not satisfactory or the author admits guilt, then he writes to all the authors rejecting the submission, explaining the position and the expected future behavior. and also considers informing authors superior rank of personnel who is responsible for the research governance. For instance, they would inform the ethics committee in our institute or the senior most person wherever the corresponding author works, and informs the authors of the action and informs the reviewer also of the outcome of the action. But if he finds, editor, that the explanation is satisfactory and there is an honest error which has occurred, or the journal instructions were not clear, or it was done by a very junior researcher. So I think that Mr. Rao's case must have fallen under this category, done by a junior researcher. Then the editor writes to the authors, rejecting the submission, explaining the position and expected future behavior, and informs the reviewer of the outcome of the action. In case the editor corresponds with the authors and there is no response from anyone, then the editor can directly contact the author's institution, requesting the concern is passed to the author's superior and a person responsible for research governance, and try to obtain the acknowledgement of the letter. And if there is no response, the editor keeps contacting the institution every 3 to 6 months. Then following this, the paper is withdrawn from publication, and banning of the authors is done from publication in the journal for 3 to 5 years. All the co-authors are informed, and the editors of the related journals are also informed about this action. And for less serious cases, placing the author on a watch list for careful examination of their submissions prior to requesting reviews in future for the journal as well as for the related journals is done. So I would like to thank Dr. Pooja who helped me to make this presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Can I call Natarajan for the next talk?
I think probably I would give references, I think, for all the terminologies used. I think you have picked up from somewhere, so if you give the reference, then it's not like anything.
No, but thanks for that. You have to go, I think.
Or any comments, someone?
Yeah. It's a very, it's basically plagiarism only.
Yeah.
Subset, she said.
You are duplicating your own or somebody else's also would be.
Now, you didn't resolve that issue of DOS times and AJO. Because there's I fighting for them. Copy pasting. So it applies to only peer-reviewed journals, or it applies to these?
Babu has, I was just thinking, Babu has sent the thing published in a souvenir in one journal, in Tamil Nadu journal, and another as something which is nothing, both are not peer-reviewed. But I think that one thing I learned from her is now we have to make sure that we inform them that if at all AIOC we are going to put it as we are saying that we already published.
I think Natarajan, if you could write an editorial on this.
Okay.
Because important is people don't know.
Yes.
There is lack of awareness on these issues, and they feel very comfortable sending to these journals.
No, my first editorial after I took over was on that, but I can read it 3 years back. No.
Their publications, recent publications, upload in the presentation.
Yeah.
Like
Actually, that should also not be.
They request all the time.
They request, they are requesting you please give your full text.
That's not amounts to plagiarism. That amounts to breach of the copyright, because the article is copyrighted. You cannot distribute PDFs in open websites for everybody to view, but you can certainly, distribute to your close associates or to your friends or on request. So that part is acceptable. But putting it on website for anybody to see without paying any money, that's not acceptable.
We find even requests coming from some of these journals published anywhere outside, and they have looked at our articles and they feel this is a very good article and it should be. We can't do that. So since the copyright can't do that, we can't do that. And somebody makes
a shift. So I have no financial interest. Who is an author? An author is considered to be someone who has made substantial intellectual contributions to a published study. This is the ICMJE. Falls under ethical considerations in the conduct and reporting of research. When is time to publish? Authorship. Who will be the principal author, co-authors, and in what order on the manuscript? And who should what journal, journal aspects or specialty journal, brief note or full paper, with an impact factor, speed of publication, book chapter, review articles. So decision about authorship, the most sensitive part of writing a paper. And we keep seeing a lot of problems happening in All India Civic Society presentations and in AIOC. 2 years back, we have withdrawn an award because somebody saw it was published in it was presented in American Academy of Ophthalmology, where the author put in a signature that the American Academy owns it, and they won an award in All India the previous year. And we had to withdraw it. And I think the author, they exactly photographs, all the photographs are the same. And each author should have participated sufficiently in the work to take public responsibility for the content. And this participation must include conception or design or analysis and interpretation of data or both. Drafting the article or revising it for critically important intellectual content. Final approval of the version to be published, but participation solely in the collection of data does not justify authorship. That's in the BMJ reference I have given. And I think that's an important thing. Who has to be an author? Acquisition of funding, collection of data, or general supervision of the research group alone does not justify authorship. Group author, when submitting a manuscript, the corresponding author should clearly indicate the preferred citation and should clearly identify all individual authors as well as the group name. All persons designated as authors should qualify for authorship. Each author should have participated sufficiently in the work to take public responsibility for appropriate portions of the content. And I think it's a big problem in a lot of medical colleges in India, and I think that's another reason I'm writing the book, so that, and now the Medical Council of India has made it mandatory for all postgraduate institutions that each one should submit one article at least in their 3 years for a peer-reviewed publication. So I think the professor also should know their role. And all members of the group who are named as authors should fully meet the above criteria for authorship, and I think I will circulate to all the professors. Order of authors' names. The sequence of authors should be determined by the relative overall contributions to the manuscript, and the order of authorship on the byline should be a joint decision of the co-authors. Authors should be prepared to explain the order in which authors are listed. Some journals now also request that one or more authors referred to as guarantors be identified as a person who takes responsibility for the integrity of the work as a whole from inception to published article and publish that information. First author should be the person who contributed most to the work, including the writing the manuscript, and should have adapted a hypothesis, defined precise methods, participated in a major way in analysis and interpretation of results written in the paper. And lead author, a person who is responsible for ensuring that all other authors review and approve the final version. And the co-author should have made significant contribution to the planning and execution of the research, the methods and procedures, the collection and analysis of the data, and other details. Senior author formulated the original hypothesis or provided significant intellectual resources and provided constructive criticism of the manuscript and accepted responsibility for the findings and the authorship. Order of authors' names. It is common practice to have the senior author appear last, sometimes regardless of his or her contribution. For young authors, there are two positions that count, first and last, and attached to either position is the status associated with the being the author for correspondence. The best combination is to be first author and the author for correspondence. And all contributions who do not meet the criteria for authorship should be listed in an acknowledgement section. Who provided purely technical help, writing assistance, department chair who provided only general support, financial and material support. And if I have a big problem, somebody writes a paper in cornea just because I head the institution, they just want to write my name, and I feel insulted. I keep telling them, you think you're honoring me, but actually you're insulting me. Because I don't know anything in cornea and I have my name there, which is really absolutely problematic. And authorship, what doesn't count? Supervision of first author, chair of department, chief of division, director of the laboratory, etc. And statistical advice alone, data entry, processing or management, and providing or helping obtain space, money, staff or other resources. So the senior author sometimes takes responsibility for writing the paper, especially when the research student has not yet learned the skills of scientific writing. The senior author then becomes a corresponding author, but should the student be the first author? Some supervisors put their students first, others put their own names first. Perhaps it should be decided on the absolute amount of time spent on the project by the student in getting the data and the supervisor in providing help and in writing the paper, or perhaps the supervisor should be satisfied with being corresponding author. So I think it has to be an ethical understanding. I suggest that they should write and sign each other within the department before they even given a dissertation or a topic, so that they are clear that even somebody is going to use their work, or even after they finish the postgraduate, I think no point in backbiting because you have already finished. And if you have not done anything also, as Shiv Kera says, if you see the crime happening and not reported, you are a criminal. So most scientists have their own policy. Whatever policy your supervisor or colleagues have, there are usually good reasons for that. Tradition, experience, or just the plain old selfish genes that we all carry. And how to avoid problems with authorship. I agree with your collaborator that you will follow the international guidelines. And I agree before starting the research, and this is what I think I find in India, they don't do that, and after completing they have a fight, or even after publishing they have a fight. And if necessary, discuss why each patient should be an author. And agree on the tentative order of authors and on who will be corresponding author. And I think I made a rule in my own place that please be sure of this and don't add any name just because they are name. Don't add a senior author to improve the chances of the publication. And honorary was the ghost. Honorary authors, named authors who have not met authorship criteria. Ghost authors, individuals not named as authors but who contribute substantially to the work. And authorship, what does it cover? Providing or recruiting study patients or other material, collecting interview data or other specimens or measurements, coordinating the data collection process, and in reality, the best that is usually achieved is each author offers a specific expertise, and all authors comment on the final draft of the manuscript. Only the primer author is truly involved in all aspects of the study. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Natarajan,
has been done. Like, idea, concept, design, then analysis of the subjects, enrolling the patients, all these things is that one, and who has got access to the data.
Yes. No, I think some journals insist on showing the rough workings also to maintain for a few months in case controversy arises. I don't remember which journal, they asked for the notes also that it's kept in store. And there are some
study. Okay, because multiple resources used. So some of the very high impact journals now, would have they will put an asterisk mark and say that these two authors contributed equally to the work. If pathology is as important as the clinic, contributed equally. So that the question of first author and second author doesn't arise. But you said what you said.
Yes.
The first author is usually the young guy who has been asked, like a thesis, and he would become the first author because he's done the legwork he is collecting. But the idea remains with the guide. So guide would become the corresponding author, and he would invariably be a senior author as well.
Yes.
Okay. The conflict arises when this guy walks out without writing the paper, and the guide says, well, I've spent all my lifetime, trying to develop this hypothesis or trying to chase this line, and this boy has walked out. Okay. And then he doesn't know what to do. Shall he ask? I was a resident, I used to write articles for my chief. Okay. But these days, sometimes, a person it was contributed by a person who was no longer interested in pursuing it.
Right.
So I think those exceptions would occur all the time.
I have a small question. When does the
design for some reason? Because many times we are only going asking and like a professional advice on what do you like, for example, sample study you want, a sample size you want to ask, or what formula to become an expert on biostatistics, where he decides which formula to apply. But we don't know. When you ask that, you cannot be a author. You are actually, some people charge for being a biostatistician. So you are maybe an acknowledgement, you can even write on payment or whatever you want to write, but it comes in acknowledgement only. Even in thesis, I think most of the time they do and work as it's like going to a chartered accountant. You are giving your data and he gives a formula. But again, how to use the formula will be the main author and not the statistician. Unless from beginning, as he said, like pathology head, the clinician and statistician for some reason are involved in every step of the sample design, the tablet form making. You are involved, I think, then only qualify that. It's very clear. What if you are contributing to the original part of the article in analysis, drafting the manuscript, and also final version you are seeing. many times biodata studies are not involved in the final version at all. Yes.
We have a lead clinician who sometimes decides
You see,
the author.
both it's a convention.
Yes.
You know, it's the professor who would say, okay, this guy can be a co-author, this can be a co-author. We overlook most of these things. Conventionally, there is nothing going wrong. But sometimes the disputes do arise. Okay, look, I have been ignored. I have contributed 2 patients in this paper of 10 patients. Why have I been ignored? So, unless we have a discussion, and it has to be before project, you have to have an open dialogue. Look, this is my concept. I want to float a study. I want to do a study. Anybody who wants to be with me, please sit with me and we'll design and we'll execute the study.
So, for example, like 100 surgeries are done by 4 surgeons. Having the 4 surgeons to be called and check whether you would like to contribute. Whether you have to be in the acknowledgement column or if you have to be a 4 surgeon, you have to do 1, 2, 3.
You have to do.
You are not ready.
And
then they have to
look at what happens with, especially in the institution. That's a problem. Because co-guide means that he has been involved in the entire process. Because he's not like giving just some patients, or he's supposed to be part of the whole. That is where the big conflict sometimes in institution arise, that co-guide has been totally ignored. Because co-guide, once you are there as a main guide and the co-guide, that means you are involved in the entire process. That is a different
thing. I think my sincere introspection and I've given a guideline is, before you start writing, for example, if guide is there, if you, for example, you are making a title, analysis of whatever particular surgery, but I think we decide first only who will do what. Whether co-guide will be author or not. We decide first. If he says no, then he also withdraws from co-guide.
Yes.
Now, after working and giving time, then you are not there feeling bad. Like
exactly. That is what conflict arises.
Dr. Nayak told me somebody used electron microscope picture from Audit Institute, published in IGO, and after publication, the electron microscope head of the department wrote to the editor and says, you are published without it. He says, the author has given a certificate. Now, whatever fight you want, you go and do it in the department. Don't involve the editor. So that's another problem.
It was solved amicably.
No, that's fine. But what he says, co-guide is not included. How will the editor be not responsible? How will the editor help also? So my suggestion to every department.
You see, some of these issues have to be resolved at the institutional review
Yes.
board.
Yes. Correct.
Yes.
You know, editors can't resolve these issues.
No, actually, we get the signed signature saying 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6. Chronological order we get. So they can't do anything to the journal.
Got by most, because I have no financial disclosure, because as far as the scientific fraud is concerned, it includes the plagiarism, the fabrication, the falsification, it includes everything. So most of these, this has been already. So we already, I think, talked about this part, that this is unrelated publication and introducing it in new publication. I think these things were already, so I'm not going to. So the problem with the scientific fraud is that there is intentional fabrication of data. And one of the problem is because of this publish and perish kind of a concept in many institutions, that you won't get a job, you won't get promoted, so you get motivated, and that's how you land up doing your fabrication. And also there is a problem at this time. You want to benefit the product or the organization because there is some other involvement. And the scientific fraud also include, like I said, and you would do that. So we talked about some of these things, that you never actually saw the patient reported in its clinical studies. This also happens. And failed to get an ethical review board approval for his research and published by producing false approval. Not perform the test but recorded as complete. I think this has happened many a times. You report that you have done ERG for all the infants, and you have done for 100 and some infants. How do you do ERG? I mean, it is not an easy procedure. You require probably anesthesia, but you have done for all. And then you're talking about that and publishing everywhere. And fudging numbers. I think this is the biggest problem for us. I think we multiply all the numbers. That is, the multiplication is so common. And falsely claiming to have found evidence, because we saw, okay, Avastin works for whatever, say ROP, which is my subject. And then you say that it worked for everybody. And all the 80, 85 patients you saw, it regressed the disease and all, and nothing happened. And which is not true, and subsequently that is what happens. Then the deliberate suppression of data in a finding, and this would happen very often, and only you tend to publish the benefit of the treatment. So rest you will not even. And the biggest problem is omitting the harmful side effects. And this is what is a serious issue, in fact. And there has been so many, I came across once I was looking at literature, that people have made millions, sometimes billions, before such drugs or other things were withdrawn, just because of the publication. And of course people subsequently lost their jobs and other things. And failure to publish, even if the result demonstrates harm of a drug, that is also, I mean, a problem. So what is motivation for a scientific fraud? You want a quick fame and a fortune, and money may be the main goal in life, and management is influenced by the revenue. And so there is a tendency to indulge in all the things what I talked earlier. So if once the scientific fraud is exposed, what should be done? Shamed, you feel shamed in your scientific community, provided something has been done about it. And all awards and prizes may be withdrawn. I think it hardly happens. At least it doesn't happen in our country. And if it is serious, it should be struck off the medical register. It happens in so many countries. And it would cast definitely shadow over the entire past research work, that may be lifelong work, because that means his intention has been like that. He has always been fabricating and doing stuff like that. And PhDs may be really retracted. That has been done in many countries. But as I already said, only minority of culprits get sacked. They may have just, so it depends. Now, this is a little bit of an issue here, solo practitioner fraud. I think private solo practitioner may inflate or falsify the data. And there is no institution can sort of investigate these allegations. And it can be difficult to prove or disapprove this kind of misconduct. And he can always insist that he is innocent. There's no way. You can't do a thing about it because you don't have that kind of a mandate to go and check everything. And this would happen. And I think Mr. Gupta already said, credibility is added once you have multiple authors from multiple places. Obviously, then probably somebody is going to really come out if something has been done like that. So every institution that conducts research needs a system to provide leadership on preventing, recognizing, investigating, correcting and publishing wrongdoing in science. And some of the things which Mr. Gupta in our department, he tries all the time, that every project, everything, we should be discussing in a committee, and it should be, and everybody should be present there. If there is a little bit of a conflict, or there is some issue involved, whether it is regarding patients or, it should be discussed and brought there. So right in the beginning, rather than in the end, you have an issue. And then all those projects, or even the smallest thing today, if you write a case report, it has to go to ethics committee. And many a times, that is what we have seen. It has not gone to ethics, but you have written that it has been approved by ethics committee. That is where the problem happens. So I think this policy of publish or perish needs to be changed. And so I think scientific fraud generally is hard to catch, because you need to examine the records. You need a couple of people in the labs for laying traps and keeping records, because you will have to, if the person is like that, you will have to do that. And maybe random spot checks apply. And if there is a whistleblower and you feel that he has really exposed, I think we need some kind of a protection for that. It is there in many countries, but then that is a problem. And what is the punishment? One is, of course, a withdrawal of a research grant. And the grant for attending the meetings, the presenting work need to be stopped. I think we need to have some kind of a, and strip the person of a job if the crime is serious. As some of the biggest people have lost their jobs, and because they benefited the companies for billions of dollars once you go in stem cell research, in so many other things where they claimed, and then these procedures started, were done. So as far as in our country is concerned, I mean, I already talked about that. There is this kind of a problem that you did not perform the test, recorded that this is complete, and this is not uncommon. Multiplying is also common, and false claims to form evidence, and publishing the same article in different journals. This has happened. This has happened even with the Indian Journal and other, and some few were named also and put on the Indian Journal. And publishing the figures and pictures from books or presentation of others. I mean, you put a figure and you put in the next article, that very picture is there. So it has happened with us also. I mean, our picture being put in the journal, even in general. And they were, so there's the intentional suppression of the sort of a results. So most scientific frauds in our country are overlooked. Even if something is pointed out, and very strictly, I think we'll have somebody at an important position, he's got to come up for the protection. So there's a problem. So there is hardly any punishment about it. And fabrication and manipulation data is not uncommon. That's why probably most people don't trust us, and we have to come out of it. We need to have a more effective ethics committee, which is very, very important. And so I think we can go on and on, but I think there are lot many issues which need to be addressed as far as the scientific fraud, especially in our relation or in our country is concerned.
Thank you, Manda.
Full opportunity. I have something to say, but I'll do it at the end of it. So, the credibility of the publication depends in part on how well the conflict of interest is handled during writing, peer review, and editorial decision making. And review is done for self-regulation by qualified members of the profession within the relevant field to maintain standards of quality, improve performance, and also provide credibility. So the conflict of interest occurs when an individual's personal and professional interests are in competition. It compromises the ethical principles of the result and would result in criminal misconduct. So there's been a lack of uniform definitions for the conflict of interest disclosure, and then there's a confusion about what needs to be reported. This is the general feeling. And it has been under increasing scrutiny in the recent years and has caused a lot of embarrassment to both publishers, editors, and the professional societies. The first disclosure of conflict of interest appeared in the New England Journal of Medicine in the early 1980s. Now, what are the author's commitments? The authors are responsible for disclosing all financial and personal relationships that might bias their work. To prevent ambiguity, authors must state explicitly whether potential conflicts do or do not exist, and should identify individuals who provide writing or other assistance and disclose the funding source for this assistance as well. The researchers must disclose potential conflicts to study participants and should state in the manuscript whether they have done so or not. Should not enter into agreements that interfere with their access to all the data and their ability to analyze them independently and to prepare and publish manuscripts. Should describe the role of the study sponsor, if any, in study design, collection, analysis, and interpretation of data, writing the report, and the decision to submit the report for publication. If the reporting source had no such involvement, that also should be stated by the author. Now, what's the commitment from the editors? They should avoid selecting external peer reviewers with obvious potential conflicts of interest. For example, those who work in the same department or in the institution as any of the authors. Authors often provide editors the names of persons who they feel should not be asked to review, and the authors should explain or justify their concerns that information is important to editors in deciding whether this should be honored or not. This request should be honored or not. The reviewers must disclose to the editors any conflicts of interest that could bias their opinions of the manuscript. Reviewers must not use the knowledge of the work before its publication to further their own interests. The editors must have no personal, professional, or financial involvement in any of the issues that they might judge. The editorial staff must not use information gained through working with manuscripts for their own private gain. Editors should publish the regular disclosure statements about potential conflicts of interest related to the commitments of the journal staff. The most practical tool available today is the disclosure of financial conflicts of interest at the outset of the submission process during the editing process, and finally to the readers. The author primarily responsible for the integrity of the data, and which has been discussed, so I'm not going into the details of it. The conduct of the science can be influenced by the biases introduced by conflict of interest, whether they are financial, professional, intellectual, or fueled by the academic competition. The potential for bias is real, whether or not the researchers believe those conflicts of interest influence their conduct. The financial conflicts of interest, as an example, in exchange for his or her research, an investigator could receive costly agents, equipment, reimbursement of personal time, reimbursement for time spent on the project, income in excess of normal salary, stock or equity in the research sponsor's company, or possibilities for future research funding. Non-financial conflict of interest could be career advancement, publishable results, service to patients or students, fame, power, family and friendships. If the mission or expectation of the institution is not compatible with his or her personal values. Conflict of commitment. Some academics form companies to commercialize the inventions or the discoveries while continuing academic work in the same area. The time and effort outside of the academic institution will conflict with commitments to the institution. There's a distinction between conflict and irresponsible conduct. Personal interest does not mean that he or she is acting irresponsibly. So to minimize the conflicts of interest, it is in the best interest of the community of science and the individual scientists. If the conflicts cannot be avoided, should at least be disclosed openly. The institution and any other parties with a significant interest should be made aware of the extent and the nature of the conflict. Conflicts of interest and the strategies for dealing with these conflicts are evolving, considering the potential for misperceptions of a researcher's motives. It is best to assume that good intentions are not adequate. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. I agree. I think one more thing we can do is that in the surgical sessions or any session, somebody, one of the person, like when you are taking about Dr. Pulaski, me, Ragnar, Dr. Amodis, I think we can have one talk on this related to all this. I think if we have only this, I think the interest is something.
Kind invitation to join the damage duplication on Publish or Perish. I'm going to deal very quickly here about the ethics of peer review process. So I'm just going to give you a small overview of peer review and going to discuss what are the ethics that you have to actually follow. I don't have any financial interest right now. I have a very short experience of being on the reviewing board of about 5 journals. So I'm just going to share some of my experience. Why do you publish? Basically, you publish to claim priority of discovery, and you share what you have learned and what you want other people to learn and disseminate knowledge. And basically, you want to do this through a peer-reviewed journal of the highest possible stature, which is the impact factor. A peer review of a scientific manuscript is cornerstone of modern science and medicine, and the peer-reviewed journals rely on expert and objective review by the knowledgeable researchers. These are the researchers who are called as reviewers, to ensure the quality of the papers that they publish are standardized and they actually go on to improve. So basically, when you want to learn about peer reviewing and its ethics, you have to know what is the basic process that goes on. You have a journal staff at every journal, like in AIOC. So basically, this journal staff oversees the receipt of the manuscripts from the authors online. Then they manage communication with the authors and then with the reviewers at the same time. And they process the accepted manuscript once they have been accepted for publication and proofreading and henceforth. The member of the editorial board are one of the first ones to have a primary look at the manuscript and the abstract. Then they select the reviewers according to their own expertise. Once they have selected the reviewers, they monitor the quality of the reviews that they are getting and recommend actions to the editors. Then is the role of the reviewer who actually get the manuscripts in their hands, and they are the one who sit with these manuscripts, analyze it, dissect it, and give correct recommendations to the chief editor or the editorial board for whether to publish this study or not. So basically, in a very small video, I'm just going to just show you what exactly is going on in the peer review process. So peer review, as we all understand, is a very sequential and stepwise approach. That is, yes, it is a stepwise approach in which first the whosoever is the author, they basically what they do is they have their own manuscripts ready. The manuscripts, they build it to the best possible level, then they send it across to the editorial board. The staff and the editor has a look, and if they see that this is beyond the scope of the journal, they basically exclude it and basically decline the submission. And if it is in the scope of the journal's standardizations and its policies, so basically the editor and the editorial board, they choose 2 or 3 different reviewers which are the experts in that area. So these reviewers actually objectively see at this different manuscripts in blinded manner, and they come out with their recommendations about either to decline the submission or to reject the paper, or they can also direct the editorial board towards the major revisions, so that hence from that on you can actually take it further and actually publish your paper with that. So from the editor's point of view, the ideal reviewer is the one who is a researcher who is working in the same discipline as the subject of the paper, yet is not direct competition with the author per se, and who understands the hypothesis, the modeling, the assessment in terms of the statistics and the outcome measures, and can actually give a very good guideline. The reviewer's identity is actually kept blind, so whenever you submit a paper, you will never come to know who is the reviewer, and it is one of the most important ethical principles of peer reviewing process. So usually in peer reviewing, there are many ethical issues which you come across, and that starts even before you start to review. That starts actually when you decide whether to review the paper or not, and then throughout the reviewing process and even after you have submitted the review. So basically, when an article comes to the editor, he sends across an invitation to the reviewer. So it is up to the reviewer whether to accept this invitation or not to review. And to see this in ethical way, what he has to see is if this paper or the abstract which has come to him, does it come under his expertise? If it doesn't come under his expertise, he should let the editor know about it. If this work is too close to his own, for example, if he himself is working on the similar principles and about to publish his own study at the same time, he should actually decline to review this paper because it will cause conflict of interest and actually may cause also plagiarism. Do they have real or apparent conflicts of other interest, such as if the authors of the institutions are related to you, whether you have collaborated with them before, whether they are in relationships with you personally or academically, and most importantly nowadays is if you have any financial conflict of interest in one of the products which are being discussed and which are being analyzed there. And I think for very busy people, it is very important also to know whether you have time to review, because you also have a very small bracket of 2 weeks to 4 weeks to review article. If you don't have time, then actually you should actually decline to review. So basically, first, if you don't have all these conflicts and if you agree to review, then you are under contract with the journal and you have to give your best possible recommendations to the editor person. So reviewers should consider appropriateness of the paper for that specific journal. For example, if there is IJO, you can actually publish right from glaucoma to neurophthal. Any kind of manuscripts can go into that. But if it is JRS or Journal of Refractive Surgery, then you have to actually make sure that it is only refractive surgery or the cataract refractive surgery articles that you are submitting there. So there are other ethical issues which you have to consider, and one of them is actually you have to see if it is a prospective study of some novel technique, if the IRB approval was sought into that or not. Many of the times, although it is sought, it is not written into the manuscript, so you have to also look into that. So once you tell those people that I am ready to review, first you have got only the abstract, just to let them know that I am going to review your article. Once you agree, then you get the full text. So basically you have some ethical responsibilities over the full text as well. And this is a confidential document. It contains unpublished data and ideas. So you have to make sure that you don't discuss it with anybody and you don't steal their ideas. You have to remember that you cannot use this information for your own knowledge and your own papers later on. You have to focus on science. So basically you have to see appropriateness of this technique, strengths, weaknesses of the experimental design, and the quality of the data and analysis for that journal per se. And you also must consider that whether this paper meets the standards of the journal. For example, the similar paper can also go into ophthalmology, which is very high impact, and it can also go into Sudan Journal of Ophthalmology, which is almost non-peer reviewed. So basically, according to journal standards and its impact factor, its acceptance is going to get varied. The reviewers comment on variety of issues that I am not going into that, and that starts right from the title unto the references. He is supposed to check on everything, and the reviewers also may be asked to comment on other editorial assistance. Some editorial comments can also be appropriate to be done to the editor whenever you are going to write your review. So during the review, a reviewer may discover ethical issues which must be considered and addressed at the same time. And some of them we have already discussed is plagiarism, duplication. That if you come to know that this also exists in this article, you have to let the editor know about it, and then the editor has to decide how he is going to deal with this in the best possible way. So basically, I'm just going to summarize. So, should there be evidence of scientific misconduct, inappropriate action that must be taken to the editor following established guidelines and procedure, it will be dealt with. You should never contact the author for more information. You should contact him only through the editorial office. And you should, if you want to seek more help from any expert, for example in statistics, you can do that, but you have to inform the editor about it. You are the agent of the journal and not a friend of the author to publish the reports. And it is very important that a seriously flawed paper must never go through, and it should be challenged at every level. So you have to write a review very precisely at every level. You have to actually jot down right from the title unto the references what all things that you believe should be improving in this paper. And if you think that this paper is not good enough at all, then you can directly reject it and you can tell about it to the editor as well. After the review, this is something that many people don't know. After the review, you are supposed to destroy the full manuscript which has come to you, because this is a confidential document. Alright. So basically, to conclude, the review of the manuscript for peer-reviewed journals raise many ethical issues and problems. Reviewers should be aware of this when deciding whether to review a paper throughout the review process and even after that. And when in doubt about ethical issues, reviewer should discuss his concerns with the editor and should always work to provide reviews that meet the highest standards of ethics as well as high standards of science to the best possible way. So, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Arman. And I think it's more for the reviewers and not...
Of settings and paper emulsification.
Thank you.
Is modification of risk factors, newer way to control visual disability from diabetic retinopathy. I have no financial interest in the study. Diabetic retinopathy is a chronic retinal disorder that eventually develops to some degree in nearly all patients with diabetes mellitus. Various risk factors known to be associated with diabetic retinopathy tend to accelerate its course and increase its severity. There are certain modifiable risk factors which include poor glycemic control, hyperlipidemia, obesity, hypertension, renal disease. Thereby, identification and their optimized control can prevent progression of diabetic retinopathy. So our purpose was to identify these modifiable risk factors of diabetic retinopathy in type 2 diabetes mellitus and correlation of risk factors with the severity of diabetic retinopathy. It was a prospective type of study done in a tertiary care center for a duration of 2 years. 600 patients were enrolled with type 2 diabetes mellitus. They underwent fundus examination after pupillary dilatation. We included any stage of diabetic retinopathy, any age and gender, but only type 2 diabetic patients with diabetic retinopathy and any duration of diabetes. Conditions which leading to the difficulty in assessment of diabetic retinopathy, like central corneal opacity, dense cataract, were excluded. Patients under the treatment of glaucoma, previous laser treatment for diabetic retinopathy, and mentally retarded not cooperative for examination due to physical disability. At initial visit, the following parameters were documented: age, gender, duration of diabetes, family history of diabetes, history of hypertension, treatment details. Following investigations were done: systemic ocular, systemic were blood sugar, fasting and post-sleep, serum lipid profile, glycosylated hemoglobin and kidney function test, which included blood urea and serum creatinine. In ocular, Stennis visual acuity of both the eyes was recorded. Slit lamp biomicroscopy was done, IOP was recorded, and fundus examination was done. Following that, reading of diabetic retinopathy was done by ETDRS classification, and association of risk factors was found by chi-square test and one-way ANOVA test. Our observations were: mean age was 73 plus 19 years, male and female ratio were almost equal. After univariate analysis, we found all the factors to be highly significantly associated with the diabetic retinopathy. But after multivariate analysis, the following were the independent risk factors, which included post-meal blood glucose levels, serum creatinine, glycosylated hemoglobin, and hypertension. And in univariate analysis for clinically significant macular edema, all parameters were found to be significantly associated. Thus, prevalence of diabetic retinopathy was found to be 35.71%. That of LPDR, PDR and CSME were 32.57, 3.14 and 10.28 respectively. After multivariate analysis, post-P blood glucose level, serum creatinine, glycosylation, hemoglobin and hypertension were found to be the independent risk factors. And after univariate analysis, hypertension, blood sugar levels, glycosylation, hemoglobin, serum lipid profile and kidney function tests were found to be associated with CSME. The Michel P. et al. Study found that the fasting blood glucose was associated with diabetic retinopathy, while in our study we found the postprandial blood glucose to be associated. Due to the differences in the treatment instituted and awareness of patients to seek medical institutions for optimal control, this difference can be explained. Other studies correlated well with our findings for both CSME and diabetic retinopathy. The differences in the finding associations between the risk factors and diabetic retinopathy may be due to the different genetic predisposition, different lifestyle, stress factors, socio-economic status, availability of medical services and awareness level. Thus, we concluded that prevalence of diabetic retinopathy was 35.71%. As due to the high prevalence rate of the diabetes in Indian subcontinent, this would convert into 5.6 million patients with diabetic retinopathy, making it a formidable challenge in the future. The optimized control of the hypertension, glucose level, serum creatinine that affect the onset and/or progression of diabetic retinopathy through an intensive multidisciplinary health team-based approach. This can reduce the impairment of vision due to diabetic retinopathy, and proper glycemic control, renal control, lipid control and blood pressure control can reduce the occurrence and/or progression of clinically significant macular edema. These are the references. Thank you.
Study of intrastromal keratopigmentation in eyes with corneal opacities. Financial disclosures, none. We all know that corneal opacity leads to visual disability and social stigma. Well, keratoplasty is the best option for our patients, but what about the patients who have got poor visual potential and good vision but having eccentric corneal opacity leading to stigma? Intrastromal keratopigmentation, that is ISKP, to disguise a disfiguring scar dates back to 1st century when Gallen reported the use of metallic salts in these patients. But side effects were numerous, like redness, watering, corneal erosions, corneal melting, along with patchy depigmentation. So, a newer organic micronized pigment has been introduced for this modality. The indications are to enhance the cosmesis of the eye for optical purposes, for visual performance where there are aberrant light sources, and to reduce the monoocular diplopia, and in cases of cosmetic lens intolerance. The aim of the study was to improve cosmesis and visual disturbance in the patients with corneal opacity using newer organized micronized pigment. 27 patients with corneal opacity were included from a cornea clinic of a tertiary care eye center. Written and informed consent was taken. 2 patients lost to follow-up and therefore we had 25 patients. The maximum follow-up was for 3 years and 7 months. The patients were given at the set of 10 questionnaires at the 3 months follow-up to assess their satisfaction level. The study was cleared from Ethics Committee of the institution. These were the inclusion and exclusion criteria. All the patients with blind eye, the eyes with no hope of visual potential, like having dense amblyopia, squint or posterior segment diseases, eyes with eccentric scars and corneoiditic scars were included in the study. Now, the intrastromal keratopigmentation was done with 2 techniques. The first one, lamellar pocket or the intrastromal technique, in which a lamellar pocket was dissected into the stroma with the help of a microkeratome prism knife. This stromal pocket was enlarged with the help of viscoelastic devices and with the help of lens spatula. Then limbus to limbus dissection was done, followed by insertion of this dye from limbus to limbus with help of a blunt spatula to achieve adequate cosmesis. In other technique, in needle stromal puncture technique, multiple needle puncture were done with the help of a 26 gauge needle, followed by insertion of the pigment. These are our results. Median age of our patient was 23 years of age. Most of our patients, 68%, had blind eyes with diffuse corneal opacity, whereas some had eccentric corneal opacity, corneoiditic scar, eccentric corneal opacity with useful vision, and 1 patient had pseudophakic bullous keratopathy. The table 2 shows the type of procedure done. In the majority of patients, they underwent needle puncture technique which had superficial opacities or deep opacities associated with superficial one, whereas 36% they underwent only microkeratome assisted intrastrobal technique. One patient underwent combined procedure. In post-operative follow-up, in intrastromal microkeratome technique, patient did have mild redness in 8. Lacrimation discomfort was way less in number, and that would dissolve in first week. In needle puncture technique, most of the patients they had redness, lacrimation, and discomfort, but at the end of 1 month, they all had no problem. When we did patient satisfaction grading, in needle puncture technique, 70% of patients had excellent result, whereas in intrastromal technique, 85% had very excellent result. Although one patient in needle puncture technique did not have very poor satisfaction level because of pseudophakic bullous keratopathy, in which we had to repeat the procedure twice, but still the patient was not that satisfied. These are our pre-operative and post-operative results. The first is a corneoretic scar, the second one the adherent lymphoma, and third one is the diffuse corneal opacity patient. This is a combined surgery done, the corneoretic scar and pseudophakia with anterior capsular thickened flap, in which the center of the photograph shows the diffuse light examinations. The flap examination might not be gratifying in all the patients, but diffuse light examination is excellent. So conclude, I would say that this pigment is a safe, satisfactory and cosmetically excellent technique. Microkeratome technique gives very smooth surface and extremely satisfactory results. Needle puncture technique may require repetition once or twice, but ultimate cosmesis is good, although the patients with corneal edema might not be that satisfied. Thank you for your kind attention.